So hi, I haven't actually prepared a presentation, as Tobin alluded to, but I am here just to talk to you about basically where we're at with climate change today. I want to start with reading you something that just came out in November from one of the co-chairs of the IPCC. That's in reference to the Cancun Climate Change Conference, COP16, taking place right now. The first quote, "The climate summit in Cancun at the end of the month is not a climate conference, but one of the largest economic conferences since the Second World War. Second, it's a big mistake to discuss climate policy separately from the major themes of globalization." And another one, quote, "has almost nothing to do with environmental policy anymore, with problems such as deforestation or the ozone hole." So it's really clear that climate change is become, for governments, heads of states, not an issue about people, about our children, about lives. It's become an issue of economics. It's become the main concern for states today is to protect the economy, the capitalist system, at all costs. And if that means including the lives of billions of our brothers and sisters from around the planet, then they've chosen that's what we'll have to do. The reason this is so important right now, and I've been working on climate change exclusively since working with Council Canadians. I sort of left that and I just wanted to focus on climate change. So I've been doing that for about 3 years, and since that time, almost by the month, you can see the science escalating so quickly that even scientists are shocked today by how quickly it's been all happening. Last month, November, scientists have cited that the Arctic now is reached its tipping point. We have methane hydrates leaking all over the planet. Methane is really, really important because under the Earth, we have triple the amount of carbon as we have in the atmosphere. Methane is 100 times more powerful in the interim, in the first couple of decades, than CO2. Then after that, it's approximately 23 times as strong as CO2. So the reason it's so important, we are losing the Arctic sea ice. Once we lose the Arctic sea ice, all the methane is able to escape, which will basically push us into runaway climate change. Hansen now is telling us quite recently that this could lead to the Earth turning into Venus. That's the worst case scenario, and of course that wouldn't happen for some time, but that's what could happen, and it would stay in that state infinitely. So it's really important not to scare you with such alarming facts, but it's important that we face reality, because corporate media and states basically want to keep us dumbed down and stupefied like they have been doing, so they can keep pressing on with their economic agenda and keep the power structure in the hands of the rich elites and the plutocracy. So it's really, really important that we understand where we're at now and basically what we have to do to do the right thing and to save our children. And if we don't do it, I mean, it says a lot about, it basically reflects that our society has become void of all empathy and caring for life. So we have a huge thing. This is why it's so important that we're working on this. Is it all over US and Canada, these events today? And there's activists, climate justice activists all over the world working on the same thing. Plankton has declined over 40% in the last few decades. Plankton gives us every other breath that we take. Oceans are acidifying at astronomical rates. Anyway, I'm going to get on to what I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of writing because basically under 1 degree, all this is happening. Everything that's happening, everything that's accelerating, the feedbacks, the tipping points. We already have feedbacks in place that are not being accounted in the IPCC reports. So the feedbacks are really, really imperative that you understand what feedbacks are, and those are the permafrost, the Arctic sea ice melt, hydrates, all the things that once we hit, it makes climate change become irreversible. So basically, climate is not a thing that we can fix later. It's also about language, how the states and media keep using the terms decades and zero by 2050. That's not true. We have to get to zero within years, not by 2050. I'm talking about the developed gas emitting states have to get down to zero quickly if the world is to avoid a 2-degree rise, which is dangerous. And anyway, back to my writing. I've been researching extensively where 2 degrees came from because I know it's not safe. And I started back in the 80s. And basically in the 80s, there were conferences in Villach, Austria, and that's where the climate negotiations began. That's where scientists started telling the world that we're in a really dangerous situation. And from that, they formed the United Nations Environmental Program Advisory Group on Greenhouse Gases. And out of that was formed the IPCC. But somewhere in the 80s, something happened. The situation on climate change changed from that of science to that of politics and economics. And in my research, I found that that happened around 1985 to 1988. And that's when the Rockefellers became involved in sponsoring the conferences. And that's when the neoclassical economist Nordis, what's his name, William Nordis? Is that how you pronounce it? You know? He's one of the... William Nordis, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. He became involved. He's one of the most outspoken. He's called the grandfather of economics and climate change. And as soon as they started getting involved, industry, business, that's when everything changed. And it's interesting, if you dig back in 1990, the target that was safe was 1 degree. And that goes back to the AGG report, the AGG report. So 2 degrees has never been safe. And that's been known since 1990. Once the economics got involved and once business got involved, that's where it changed. And so 2 degrees from 1990 has always been considered the upper risk, dangerous limit for climate change. And what happened from when you follow from 1990, 1996, the EU decided to make 2 degrees their policy, recognizing that it was the upper limit for danger. And they did that for economic reasons, mostly, but also not really understanding that temperature would be the one to stick. So after that, and you can even find Greenpeace papers, Greenpeace reports, up to 2000, Greenpeace supported 1 degree, not 2. But and then after that, 1 degree sort of just disappears from everywhere. It's even in the IPCC report, they refer to the AGG report of 2 degrees, but they don't mention. They mention that there was another target, but they don't even mention 1 degree. So it's really, really important to understand that 1 degree has never been safe. Yesterday, there were new reports issued. Kevin Anderson from the Tyndall Institute stated the revised 2 degrees now 2 degrees is now extremely dangerous. It's not dangerous anymore, extremely dangerous. And now they're doing modeling to see how we can adapt to 4 degrees. Understand any degree we reach in our life will double for future generations. Kevin Anderson last year, before COP15, told the world, it was published in I think 2 newspapers in the world, that by 2050 he predicts 500 million people will be left on the planet. The rest will have been starved. Agriculture is declining, and everything under the equator is going to bake. 2 degrees for Africa. When you say 2 degrees globally, it means all kinds of different degrees all over the world. Like for instance, the Arctic would be way up, I think over 14 degrees.
14.
Thank you for the question. Oh, I'm done?
No, 1 minute.
1 minute. So we have a huge, huge crisis. This has to be considered the greatest crime ever committed against humanity, ever, in the history of the world. It's sick because it's all over money. It's all over GDP. GDP accounts for, it's a horrible indicator of prosperity. That's basically, even governments now are accepting that. GDP accounts for militarism, war, pollution, death. So it's a terrible way to gauge prosperity. But basically, until we start talking about the roots of climate change, which is the capitalist system, we're never going to get anywhere. I don't know what else to say because I have to wrap it up. It's just such an imperative issue. The science is accelerating. Our governments are lying to us. We're really going to have to rise up, the people, and I don't know how that's going to happen. You know, maybe in a synchronized fashion, people will have to withdraw all their money from the banking institutions. Maybe we're going to have to all mobilize and stop paying our mortgage because this system cannot function without our money. So somehow we have to bring the system to its knees to save our species. So that's really what we're up against. And maybe we can use unions and different things like that to make this happen on a national scale. But as countries who've caused the crisis in the first place, it's up to us to resolve it, because our emissions output is massive. You know, approximately 20 tons per person, compared to someone in Africa who almost has nothing, like almost nothing at all. So our countries have caused the problem, and now it's up to us to find the solution, and our governments are not going to do it for us. They are absolutely not.